We are live. Okay, so I asked you to send in five possible law proposals, and then I wanted to for our society project, and I wanted to go over those. And in case we decide to like word it a certain way, or like after me and you talk, if we want to like adjust how they sound.
Sure.
So for your first one, legalize all drugs. Um, do you? So one thing I've specified in other ones where I've brought up similar topics is the ability to like sell it in stores to where people can like walk out with it.
Yeah.
Do you want it to be legal in the sense that as long as something's age regulated, that anything essentially that you can consume can be sold at any stores?
Dispensaries specifically, preferably, but yeah,
Okay.
in essence, I would want a stronger age rating. Like I want a stronger age rating for alcohol, but I would definitely want it for more like hard substances. I'd want a waiting period on that more than like 21 because I'd like somebody to be a lot older before they decide like, hey, I'm gonna give meth a shot. But like
Right.
you know,
Okay.
there's a lot of upsides to making sure that drugs are legal. It societally it doesn't make it like this big shameful thing. It makes it so that it's more achievable for people to get into treatment instead of being criminalized and just ending up in the criminal justice system. There's a lot of reasons that I'm like
Yeah.
for legalizing all of them.
Okay. Now, would you want it to be legalized as long as the age range is a certain thing, or would you want it to be no matter what legalized, but then hope that you can also get regulations on age later?
I would hope that I could get age regulations, but the priority is having it all legal, just for the broadest
Okay.
positive outcome.
Okay, so if people were to vote on it being legalized now, and therefore I think in general when things are become legal or illegal or whatever, we view it mostly we're referring to adults. So until we specify, it would mean that meth and heroin and all that you could buy at 19 because that's the
Yeah,
society's adult age range. Okay, cool. I just wanted to check on that. Now, so before I had seen that, I had already prepared my new set of laws that came out, and one has meth on there.
yeah,
And then we had already talked about marijuana and cocaine. So now, if meth does not pass, if people want it to be illegal, then I'm guessing the one that says all drugs will not pass. So I wonder if
possibly.
yeah, well, I mean, just because if the majority says no to meth passing, then then legalizing all drugs, including meth, the majority would have to say no to. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I
Um,
think that there could be more discussion that could sway people if you went on a broader all drugs basis. Because if you just go with meth, meth has like severe connotations. There
mhm.
are like, it's harder to make a logical argument to people that's receptive about meth specifically. But when you talk about drugs broadly, you can reference like drug policy that has worked in the past. You can reference like the fact that with us illegalizing cocaine and heroin and meth, we are essentially funding the cartels in South America. Like there's a lot that I can argue on behalf of
Hmm.
all drugs that's harder to do
Okay.
on the case of meth.
Interesting. Okay. I wouldn't have thought that would be the case, but I mean, sounds good to me. It's fine with me. I was going to say if meth doesn't pass, but then there are some things that are illegal that you think would be more likely to pass, then when I bring forth your proposals, I was going to say maybe it'd be worth picking a different one that was like closer in range to like cocaine or something.
Mhm.
But if
I'm
you think it's best and you think you can argue for all of them, even if meth does not pass, then that's fine with me too.
I'm pretty confident. I mean, most of the people that we talk to and most of the people that are part of the project are either libertarian or at least it seems like most of them are libertarian. The vocal ones are,
Yeah.
or they are generally more receptive to the idea of like bringing down criminalization, keeping people out of prisons. So it's easier to argue on the behalf of like here are all of the horrifying reasons, or here are all the horrifying things that happen when we abolish or when we outlaw these things. Look back to alcohol prohibition, how bad that was. It's harder to do with meth because a lot of people have like very personal experiences with people who are on meth, so it
Yeah.
makes it a little more difficult.
I just wouldn't want anybody to be misled. Somebody might hear drugs and go, yeah. And then when you go, that includes meth, and they go, oh, never mind. Like, I'd want to make sure that they're aware, like, what that means.
Oh,
But
I would clarify that, yeah.
I guess anybody in the group should be aware. But
Mhm.
yeah, I'm torn on it. I personally think anything should be legal, like even fentanyl. It really doesn't matter. You can drink bleach if you want. I would just say that there's certain things that I think should only be able to be done in a facility, and that would be
Yeah.
something like meth or heroin. But
That would be
we,
part of it, is like part of the reason that it would be really beneficial to legalize all of that is that we wouldn't have bikers in RVs, you know, using methylamine to cook up meth that like completely removes you from reality the moment you use it. There would be testing procedure. There would be like actual shows to show purity to make sure that you're not getting something that's cut. There's a lot
Gotcha.
of reasons to legalize all of them. It makes it safer. It gives you better access to rehab and things like that. So I'm a lot more confident in arguing broadly than I am specifically for meth.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so next thing you put provide a publicly funded option for healthcare. So
Yes.
the only thing that has already been put to a vote that I have not put like on the website
Hmm.
is we did a healthcare one. Somebody wanted. I asked some people what they wanted to be voted on. Healthcare was one, and it passed. So it's decided already that we have a universal like tax funded healthcare.
Okay.
I just haven't put it on the website because it seems so money based, and we haven't gone over anything in the project about how taxes or anything work. So as of right
That is going to
now,
be a very contentious subject.
right? As of right now, money doesn't even exist in our society. We have
Yeah.
laws of what you
At
can and
this
can't
moment, we're
do.
communist.
Something like, well, no, because nobody's forced to do anything.
Well,
At this,
communism at its base isn't about force. It's like the one of the things that Marx said he wanted for communism was that somebody could have the freedom to walk the factory floor one day, fish another, pursue the arts. Like that was the thing was that it would create more freedom. That's like the one of the things that's kind of lost on a lot of people that don't actually look into it is that when you look at like Red Scare propaganda, it changes your mind about that. But I was just saying because it's moneyless. It's a moneyless, stateless, classless society. That's the idea anyway. So it's why.
gotcha. Sorry, I was just typing up something. Gotcha. Okay, so let's see. Because I like the idea of having five law proposals that are Aric specifically. And so since we already have the healthcare one and I just need to put it on the website, let's adjust it. Do you think there's any detail that we could add? Um, what do you think? So do
I
you
would
think
like to
there?
have cosmetics covered by the publicly funded healthcare.
Okay, cosmetics. So that
Cosmetic
would be
surgeries.
okay. So that would be any cosmetic surgery. So if somebody wanted to get a nose job or get a boob
Yeah.
job or any of that
You
stuff.
there would probably be a decent waiting list for that because doctors usually in those kinds of systems are more preoccupied with performing things that people actually need. But like that's one of those things that when you look at Canada's wait times, one of the big things that people actually wait for is cosmetic surgeries. It's not so often like really desperate surgeries. So yeah, I'd like
Okay,
to see that covered. Just anything you need. It's just, you know, if you just want a nose job, you have to accept that if you're getting it for free, you're going to wait a while.
gotcha. Okay, okay, and so that would be funded by taxes. Okay,
Ideally.
um, okay. And would there be limitations at all? Like, what if somebody wanted something that somebody could, like, let's say something like somebody wanted to have their arm cut off or something weird like that.
If you wanted to, so like a doctor, you would have to consult with a doctor first. You can't just get like anything you want done because the doctor would have to determine whether or not there was actually a reason to do that. That
Okay, a
is like,
government approved doctor, or could it be Dr. Hughes?
doctor with a license. Yeah.
Okay, doctor with a license. Okay, okay, okay.
I still
Um,
want doctors to like prove that they know what they're doing.
okay. And okay. And what if 90% of the doctor said no, but 10% said no, it's good to cut your arm off.
I would generally lean on the majority of doctors. I don't see a case where a doctor would be like, this perfectly fine arm. Yeah, let's just chop that fucker off. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand why a
Yeah.
doctor would go for that, but there's
Yeah.
always strange outliers in any
Well,
system.
not that we need to get too into it, but I mean, so similar to something like, somebody feeling like they're born in the wrong body, they have breasts, they don't want breasts, they want them cut off.
Hmm.
And I get that. It's whatever, like if something was in my brain telling me I wanted something different than I have or whatever, I get that. So if somebody wanted, like obviously there's a different downside. Like
Hmm.
you don't lose the ability to do two-handed things by removing your breasts. Where if you
It
remove
doesn't
an
remove
arm,
like the entire functionality to exist in the world.
sure, sure, sure. But yeah, yeah. So I guess I could just come up with a different random example. But I guess the idea is if somebody wants something that's not thought of as normal today, um,
If
I
it would have to be a surgery that would benefit you in some way. Like
yeah. So
if
I
it's something that would be like removing my leg because I want to, or
mhm.
cutting off my hands, that is something that would lead to like a psychological evaluation to figure out why,
Yeah,
because there's not generally like any good reason to want to chop. There's actually some like brain trauma related type stuff that can cause you to feel like your foot is not your foot, and there are ways to like deal with that. So that would
hmm,
lead to, let's get you some psychological help and figure out what the fuck is going on, because it is
gotcha.
not right to want to remove your foot.
Okay. Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Also, I see that Vabehav is in the comments here. And
Mhm.
if we get through yours in time, Vabehav sent me 5 as well. And I like the idea of going over his. So maybe once me and you go
Sure.
over yours, we could have him hop in and go over his
All right.
together. Because
If we've
I'd like
got
to.
time, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, and the only reason I might have to go at 1 my time is I might have another talk, and I'm gonna before I leave our talk, I'll check in with that guy because that one is
Yeah.
kind of iffy. I don't know if it's gonna happen. Okay. So, create your third one is create a crisis group that can show up to calls instead of
Like
police.
cahoots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is cahoots?
So Cahoots, I can't remember exactly what Cahoots stands for. It's an acronym, but it's like, instead of sending cops to like mental health crises, for example, they send
Hmm.
Cahoots people, people who are not licensed, but they're trained to deal with those kinds of situations. Anything where you don't necessarily need somebody with like a gun to show up, you would
Hmm.
send Cahoots. So everywhere that they've done this, there's different names for it, but Cahoots is the one that most people know. Everywhere they've done this, it's reduced arrests, it's reduced violent interactions between law enforcement and civilians, it's increased public trust. It's been widely very positive. And like Cahoots, they can still like, okay, this is way out of our wheelhouse, this could be dangerous. They will still eventually call the police if they have to. But this is in order to make sure the people who actually need help get help, because a lot of times the cops are not very well equipped to deal with those kinds of situations.
Gotcha, gotcha. Um, okay. Yeah, no, it's complicated. I don't think I think that obviously it can just be put up to a vote.
Yeah.
And then it maybe it could be interesting to have like it where we can vote that we want it, and then we can also I think there's a lot of things that we would vote on that might say something like if this were the outcome, then this would make us flip to this. So like for example, if the like it wouldn't be like a psychiatrist or whatever, but something like a psychiatrist or somebody
Mhm.
that's like that works in mental health.
Yeah, they're
If
like
enough of
therapists and stuff like
them,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
like if 30 of them were murdered a year, for doing something like this, then we would change it to X or whatever. Because I
Well,
think there's
yeah.
I think
If
there's a
if it
couple
was like
routes.
if there was a high incidence of these people getting murdered at that point, I would just say like let's have a police escort. Like there would be steps, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
see a reason to get rid of it. That would just mean that we would need to adjust what kind of calls we send them out for.
Yeah, well, and it could mean a couple different things. So you could train mental health experts that would do a job like this in something like how to use a taser or how to use mace or
Yeah,
something in case of issues. Or on the other side of it, you could train police officers to handle mental health better. There's a handful of different ways you can look at it.
well,
I don't think there's a simple
part of the reason
um,
that I don't like the idea of training the cops to do it is that that would be adding a lot to a load that they already kind of have. Like that
mm,
would be an excessive amount of training. And like I'm
yeah.
all for training them in conflict resolution. We need to do that. They do it in other places. It works out really well.
Okay.
De-escalation and conflict resolution are really important, but dealing with people who have mental issues is such a complicated process that
Mhm.
expecting every cop to be able to do that would be unrealistic.
Yeah, so my biggest concern, and this just popped into my head, so I could be crazy and wrong. My biggest concern would be something like if the police come across. So I just watched a video the other day, and
Sure.
it was a lady that was walking out of Walmart without paying for something, kind of old lady, like in her 70s, and
Hmm.
they stopped her. And they took the stuff from her, and then she started walking home. And the police got caught up to her after the call was made, and she was saying she was going home, and he tried to get her to stop. She wouldn't stop, and he like
Hmm.
threw her to the ground, handcuffed her, this whole thing. Turns out she had dementia, and
Yeah.
she had no like, it was I
That's
blood
that's something you
boiled.
would that's something you would use cahoots for because
Mhm.
they would recognize that a lot quicker than a cop would.
Yeah,
That's what they'd be trained to do. They'd go
yeah,
like, "Oh, this lady doesn't know where she is. Let's help her get home or
yeah,
to a
no,
facility, contact family, that kind of
for
stuff."
sure. No, I
Yeah.
got you. And so luckily this guy got fired, and
Good.
the whole thing. But it was really sad to witness. And so here's my concern: the more that police officers come in contact with people in situations like this, I think they should the more they should be trained for situations like this, where if you start having a certain set of people go in when you think it's a mental health issue, and therefore the police are going to deal with a lot less mental health issues. But then in cases where people don't know, like this Walmart that called the police
Yeah.
because this lady's stealing the stuff, they didn't have any guess that it was a mental health issue. So then
Yeah.
the police are going to interact with mental health issues even less and be less prepared for it.
So
So it's just a
we
thought.
we've already kind of had to learn how that works. So the way it usually goes is like 911 dispatch gets the call and they say it's a shoplifting call. Then they ask for more details because they're supposed to do. They go, oh, elderly woman walking out with things she doesn't own, just started walking home. And they could go, okay, so this sounds like something that's low risk. We can send out the cahoots team and they can
Mm.
like verify what it is. And if it ends up being dangerous, then we can involve the police.
Okay.
But generally, like, cops are trained in a very specific way, and it's not super
Mhm.
conducive in this country to like
Yeah.
taking things down.
No, fair point. And I also don't think we need to look at it like how do we view it in our country. Now the outcomes I think are important to look at for our country, and I think that's how we should look at it is
Yeah.
like how many crimes are done, how many this, that, or the other for the numbers. But how we
Hmm.
word things in our project society, I think should be almost as if none of this stuff ever existed. So
Yeah.
one thing we could call it would be that every police station would be split in sections. Like so
Hmm.
there's just how every police station has somebody that does all the filing of stuff, computer
Yeah.
work, emails, phone calls, and then some people are out on the road pulling people over, traffic stuff, whatever. If you just imagine it split in half, and half the building is the police officers, we can call them police officers, but they are specifically only there to go to mental health calls. And then let's say we split it in thirds. There's one third is only
Hmm.
for traffic related stuff. Yeah, pulling people over for speeding, doing high
I
speed
would
chases.
like them to be distinct because there is in every community everywhere, but especially in America, there is a lot of distrust associated with cops.
Mhm.
So if you have like, we're going to send some police officers over who are trained to deal with mental health problems, those people are going to be on their guard immediately. So like if you go like, we're going to send this team to come talk to you, that's a very
Mhm.
different situation.
But wouldn't
It's
we want
like
to
a
fix
lot
it?
of times they get involved. Well, I mean, it's better. So, like, part of the reason that it's better to do a separate system is one, these are usually people from that community, so they community police. And two, these people responding to these kinds of calls, because it is a large proportion of what ends up being police calls, allows police resources to be less spread out. It allows them to be used for things they actually need to be used for. You can have
Mhm.
less patrolling beat cops and have them in better positions to respond to things they actually need to respond to. It cuts
Okay.
down on police response times. It's generally a really positive
See,
thing. Like if
but you
we
just want them to
could,
have a different. You just want them to have a different front door, is what you're saying?
well, I mean, they could work through the police station. They usually do. I just don't
Okay.
want them to show up in like cop uniforms, right? Like as soon as
Okay.
you see somebody roll up in a police car and they jump out in those black uniforms, that immediately puts a lot of people on edge because police have the ability to completely ruin your life.
Why don't
So like,
we? Why don't we
it's
change
just
all the
something people
uniforms
are aware
then?
of.
Why
Well,
don't we
changing the
just?
uniforms isn't really, it's not because it's a black uniform. It's just like here they have black uniforms. That's what I leaned on. Like
Okay.
in New York, they call them the boys in blue, right? Like it's more that once you know how to associate the uniform, it's a very specific look. They have them in very specific types of cars. It all sets up like a very tense situation. And if
Okay.
you're somebody who's having a mental health crisis, that tense situation can turn really weird really fast.
Okay.
And it's better to have them off their guard when you first show up so that you can properly de escalate and communicate with somebody.
Okay. So, quick question. We have a building full of people. They're not police officers, but they are specifically designed for when a 911 call comes in. If there's a good
Mhm.
chance it's a mental health thing or elderly or whatever, that
Yeah.
they'll send out one of these people instead of the typical police.
Yeah.
So my question is, in case I think of some ideas to get specific with the law proposal before sending it out. My question is, do you want these people that are specifically trained in mental health stuff, therefore likely to handle it better than typical police? Do you want them to have a backup of having the same stuff on their belt that the police have? They just have more training with mental
Mm,
health, or should they not have a gun?
I think if they're going to have guns, they should be in their cars. Like you can have a rack in the car with like a shotgun with beanbags or
Okay.
something, so that if you need to fall back on something, you can. But part
Okay.
of the problem with having somebody walk around with a gun on their hip or like mace or whatever is that once you get kind of scared by something, you are more likely to lean on those things. It's fight or flight. Once adrenaline starts going, you don't really think too hard about things. So even if you know this is a mental health situation and you're trained to deal with it, if it feels like it might be getting violent, you might jump to those conclusions a little too quickly. So
Gotcha. Okay.
generally, it's better to have them unarmed as well because people who are like schizophrenic, if you come up on one of those situations and you have a gun on your hip, that schizophrenic is immediately going to start putting two and two together and getting five because they're
Yeah.
going to assume that you're there to shoot them or something.
Oh, dude, I don't want to get too off topic, but did you hear about the new medication that's been created for schizophrenic people where they basically just have to get 2 shots? I think it's 2 shots a month or a year. One of those
Oh,
two.
I haven't heard
But
about that.
it's a quick little shot. You get it, and it's essentially like taking your daily medicine, and that will be so revolutionary. That's that if it works
Oh, yeah.
well. That's awesome.
That would be great if it works out. I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to look into that. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. My wife told me about it the other day, and she's pretty thorough at looking into things. So, okay. Better suited for the call, please. Okay, no guns. Okay, they have tasers on them. They have shotgun beanbag things in their car. No
Yeah.
guns. Okay. Fourth one: ban high fructose corn syrup.
Hmm.
So the question I have is, this doesn't become illegal It just can't be sold to the
It
public in stores.
so it would either be an entire ban on companies using high fructose corn syrup as like a filler and an artificial sweetener for foods to make them more addictive, or
Hmm.
generally just make them cheaper because it's
Yeah.
really really bad for you.
Okay. So
But
as far
if you
as
wanted to like buy it yourself and put it in your own food, you'd be free to. But companies shouldn't be doing it.
oh,
You see what I'm saying?
okay. So you can buy it in bulk from a company, but a
Yeah.
company can't make a product that you can eat
Hmm.
with it. And
Yeah.
okay,
They would
and
have to
it's
use
not
like
just that it's
real
highly
natural
taxed.
sugars.
It's not
Yeah.
just that it's highly taxed. It is banned from being in products that are
Yeah.
sold to consume. But
In mass
okay,
produced products, they wouldn't be allowed to use it. If you make like artisanal goods and part of that happens to be high fructose corn syrup, that's fine. But like the way that
what's that? What's
companies use
artisanal? Artisanal?
artisanal, like a person, like like artisanal pickles, like somebody who works out of their like own shop and they make small batch
Oh, like
foods and things
artisan.
like that.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So like
Uh,
if you're like that, I could see an
ooh.
argument for it, but that might come into like taxation or
But
something.
that person
But
has to buy.
generally like big companies use high fructose corn syrup to replace a lot of things that would normally be in it that would make it healthier. So high fructose corn syrup is like largely to blame for a lot of the obesity problems that we have.
Yeah.
It's a generally negative thing. So like if you wanted to use it on your own, it's like MSG, right? Like MSG isn't great for you, but if you want to put it in your own food or if it's in Chinese food or whatever, that's fine. It's monosodium glutamate. It's a big flavor enhancer, but it shouldn't be in big quantities in food.
Yeah.
High
I've
fructose
heard
corn syrup would have
actually
to be
I've
regulated
heard
there.
people are kind of flipping over on that one and saying MSG
Mhm.
is actually good for you now. Um,
MSG isn't necessarily good for you. It's not bad for you unless you have like an allergy for it, but in large amounts it can have problems.
gotcha.
Like my grandma
Okay.
can't eat MSG, but like most people can.
Gotcha. Okay, so I think having it be where only small companies can use it is going to be too complicated to work unless you really want
It could
to.
be, yeah.
I think it might be best to say that it can only be sold as the product itself if you want to
Yeah.
go that route. Because the other
Oh,
thing,
that's a lot
if
simpler.
you
It's easier to break down. So, like
yeah.
artisanal goods could be something we look at later on down the line because artisanal goods would have to be regulated a very specific way anyway. So
Because I would say if
that, yeah,
somebody can make it at their own home, like if somebody could get corn and break it down and make high fructose corn syrup and make their own stuff. That was the other question I was going to ask: is would that be
yeah,
illegal? But since they can buy the product itself,
yeah,
like just in a tub or whatever,
yeah. You could buy
they
a
can
bottle of
make
it if you want
stuff.
to.
They can give it. They can make cookies out of it. Give it to their friends. They
Yeah.
just can't sell it in a way where it would be governed and taxed and
Hmm.
sold to the public as
Yeah.
this is FDA approved. Because yeah, that's one of
Yeah.
the biggest issues is back in the day before there was the processed food there was humans would mostly eat food that was at least okay for humans. But we're kind of most of us are lazy in a way. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but just where if somebody figured out how to pull oil out of stuff and pull sugar out of stuff and turn this grain into flour and mash it all together, and then you have the most unhealthy possible thing ever that we call a cookie.
Yeah.
It's like we turn this whole wheat into flour, and then we turn it into white flour, so it has all of its
Hmm.
nutrients removed from it, and then
Oh
we
yeah.
take sugar separate, add that to it, and then like fats and whatnot, and
And
you have
like
like zero nutrition, and it's just like slow killing poison.
the
And it's
bread at Subway is legally not considered bread in, I think it's in Ireland or Scotland. It's considered cake because of the sugar content in it.
yeah, huh, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's a big problem, especially with American foods, is like really cheaply made food stuff that's very available for people who are poor, don't have time to cook. A lot of that is loaded down with sugars and especially high fructose corn syrups. And high
Gotcha.
fructose corn syrup doesn't break down properly in your body the same way regular sugar does. So it can cause a lot of health issues. It's just generally like I wouldn't want, like Doritos to do that. I wouldn't want like Walmart to have all their great value products filled with fucking high fructose corn syrup. If
Mm.
you're going to make it sweet, you have to put sugar in it. But if you want to make cookies at home and you decide you want to slap some molasses and high fructose corn syrup in it, that's all you. But you can't like sell it as like a mass product for people to buy. It's
Gotcha.
generally bad for people's health.
All right. Okay, so we got Jeremy here in the chat. Jeremy, I just want to let you know what's happening here. I asked, similar to how I asked you to write 5 ideas for police, I asked Aric to send me 5 law proposals, and we're going over those 5 before they get sent out to be voted on. And then when I'm done with Aric here, we're going to have Vabehab hop in here, and then myself and Aric will talk to Vabehab about his 5, because he did 5 as well. Let's see.
Jeremy let
Contrarian.
me in on his 5, and I would bat in 1,000. We agree on all of them.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I'm going to be talking to Jeremy about his on Sunday. Contrarian 420 said propylene glycol in vapes is derived from petroleum. Do you have any thoughts on
Propylene
this?
glycol can be there's different ways to get it, as I understand it. But propylene glycol is also used for a really wide range of things. It's a chemical stabilizer, so it's used in asthma inhalers to keep the chemical stable and have it not break down. It's used to de-ice planes because the freezing limit is so low on it that it just melts the ice. There's a lot of things propylene glycol is used for.
Gotcha. Contrarian 420, if you want to propose a law that we all vote on, put it through here and I'll write it down and it'll go on the next list. Contrarian 420 is a really good guy, even though he challenges a lot of us in different ways. I've known him since the beginning days of the Reasonable Vegan channel. And good guy. And he's brought up a couple different law proposals that we've voted on. So anyways,
I think I was talking to you before you made that channel. That was wow. It's been like 2 years now. It's been a while.
No, Aric, you're the OG. Okay, so
And we met in the YouTube comment section.
yeah. So for the last one for Aric, it's ban the use of lead in any object that doesn't openly require lead, like fishing weights. Is the fishing weights one that requires it, or an example of one that does not require it?
So fishing lead or fishing weights generally, if they're even mildly affordable, are made of lead. They can be made of tungsten, but tungsten fishing weights are really, really expensive. So like stuff when I use fishing weights, it's just something that's like nearby me. Like I have fishing poles on the other side of my garage. I have like 8 of them. But like we sold sunglasses at my fucking store that had a cancer warning on them because there was an amount of lead in them. Like there's a lot of things that have lead in them that shouldn't.
So is lead something that shouldn't be used at all?
Outside of like really specific uses, like bullets need lead because you can use tungsten, but it's really expensive. You can use depleted uranium for bullets; it's also very expensive. So lead is affordable, it's cheap, it's malleable, it's easy to work with. So there are a lot of mass-produced things that need lead, but generally outside of those situations, lead shouldn't be an additive in anything it doesn't need to be in.
Gotcha.
Lead can cause brain damage. It can cause it can make people very unreasonable. And once you have lead in you, it doesn't go away. It gets in your bones. It just stays there. And it can cause really, really severe issues. Like leaded gasoline is responsible for a lot of horrible shit. Like they say that leaded gas is probably responsible for the rising crime rate until the early 90s when they banned it. It's responsible for a multi-100,000 IQ drop cumulatively around the world. Lead is a very negative thing to have around.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll probably assume that if I knew more, I would put yes to the ban on it.
I know a short documentary I can send you about leaded gas.
Send it. Send it my way. I'll probably put undecided on the vote, but it's a thing that I'd probably hope the vote would go through if I knew more about it, and I want to learn more about it. Before I have Vabehab hop in here, Contrarian 420 put his law proposal up. He said, "Should our society allow totally sovereign groups to exist within its borders?"
No.
So yeah, that'll be a cool thing to put to a law. So I'm guessing what he means by that would be, could there be so if we had what we are declaring a country with borders, could there be any group that would not be controlled by the laws of the land?
I would say there would be like real detriment to that. Like that
Yeah.
having people that aren't governed by the laws of the country could lead to some weird issues.
Now, are there any countries or even in the U.S. where that's the case? So
In
Jeremy is
the
saying,
US, it
Jeremy
was
is
for the
saying
community.
even native tribes, and maybe that's what
Um,
Contrarian 420 is referring to.
Native
Um,
tribes are sovereign in a sense, but it's negative. It has a very negative impact on them specifically. Like living in Oklahoma, I was by a lot of reservations, and there is a lot of weird spite from the governorship towards the natives. So like a lot of times their energy is not super reliable. They lose power a lot for very extended periods of time. It's hard for them to have clean water that they don't have to buy from companies because the government doesn't care to help them. But having like sovereign groups, like if you've heard these people that call themselves sovereign citizens, that's
mm-mm.
based on like an old charter from the 1800s that was only in effect for like, I think maybe a year or two because
Wait,
it
let me
turns
pause.
out.
Let me pause you real quick, because not only do we need to get Vape in here, but real quick on the native one. So you're saying that there is no native tribes in the U.S. should be sovereign.
Uh, I think if we are going to have them continue to be sovereign, they should probably be like properly taken care of and not like spitefully hurt constantly. That's just in my experience, it's what I've seen, and that's generally what I've read happens to them, especially in Oklahoma. I think that it's okay for them to have their own like sovereign areas, but generally they're not exempt from the law. They're not sovereign within the state.
No,
The
no. Do you
reservations
want? No, no.
themselves
Hold
are.
on, hold on, hold on. I'm wondering if you
Ah,
want them to be, not what currently
mm,
is.
no, not
Okay.
really.
Let's see. Another call. Sorry, one sec. You should be far hop off another call. Okay. Let's get Vape in here. Because we went over all yours, and I think those are going to be good to vote on. Contrarian 420 has another one. Do we have complete bodily autonomy in our society? Under no circumstance can anyone be compelled, forced to take medication, medical procedures without consent. So, one thing I want to point out, we do not use the C word that ends with the number above 18 and under 20. Um, and but yeah, that'll be another good one to do. Let's see. I'm putting this link in here, and this is for Vavehav to hop in here. Because yeah, I think it's complicated. Like I think there's a very important things that vaccines that we've created for like polio and different things like that that have saved a lot of lives.
Measles, mumps,
Um,
rubella, things that we've
yeah,
seen like come back after over 100 years because
yeah.
people have decided that they no longer trust vaccines.
Yeah, no, it'd be interesting to put a vote on that one. Contrarian 420, I am curious, just with something like say polio, should parents be legally forced to accept their kids being vaccinated with the polio vaccine? Okay, he said that's debatable. I don't trust pharmaceutical products. Okay. Okay. So Contrarian 420, I took, I couldn't copy and paste for some reason. So I took pictures of your two laws and I'll put those into effect. Um, I think this topic being brought up by you on the Reasonable Vegan channel is what led to my first warning I ever got. That's made me nervous ever since. Um, so, Contrarian 420 noticed an eye roll from Aric to him and said, "I roll back to Aric."
It's the whole I don't trust pharmaceutical companies thing. Like I don't either, but vaccines are their own deal, and the
Mhm.
science on those is pretty settled. That's why I rolled my eyes about that.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, where is Vabehav? Vabehav, the link is here. It's 5 things up. I'm gonna pull up Vabehav's 5 things that he wants voted on. And then we can even start talking about them without him.
We could, yeah.
Yeah. If there we go.
Wrote I roll back.
He said no, they are not. Okay, so Vape have, please hop in here, but until you do, we're going to start talking about some of your stuff. He said, should we outlaw price gouging during emergencies?
We already have that outlawed, and people go to jail every year in Florida because of it. We absolutely should.
Gotcha.
It's like the height of scumbaggery to like, well, there's a hurricane coming, so this pack of Aquafina is now $28.
Yeah,
Like,
no, it is. It's scumbaggery for sure. I don't know if people should lose their rights to, like, I
I
think
don't.
that's more of a thing where
I feel
people should
like
just
jail
remember.
might be a little like a little bit much for it, but there should be some fines. There should be like some kind of thing outside of social pressure for it because it takes advantage of people. Like
Gotcha.
you need these things, and that's why they're jumping up the price. Like propane goes way up in some
Mhm.
places, and it only lasts like a week because they get reported immediately. Like it's always just like a lot of times it's people that the community already doesn't trust that do that. Like whenever
Mhm.
somebody in this area gets caught for doing that, I don't hear people go like, I can't believe that Tim would do that. He's such a trustworthy person. They're like, no, I bet I get that fucking douchebag would do that. Like they know
Yeah.
that there are those kinds of people.
Yeah, I just don't know if that kind of thing matters for something being legal or not. But I mean, I get what you mean. That's probably accurate. Where did Vape have go? I wanted to get him in here on this. Okay.
They only need the damn garage when I need it.
Should gerrymandering be punishable a punishable offense by jail time? I don't know if that could be a thing that could happen outside of it just being able to happen. We would just have it be not part of our political system, right?
Yeah, I mean there are. I hope that car is not too loud. It's right by me.
I can
But
hear you. It's a little loud, but it's whatever. We'll get over it.
so I would hope that like it would be hard to get away with, but there are like weird like background ways, as far as I understand it, that people still kind of get away with it. It's complicated.
Yeah. What Jeremy, I'm curious if you're saying that you disagree with which one you disagree with me on if you're talking to me. Um remind me real quick. Gerrymandering isn't that choosing where the borders are essentially on when you outline which sections are have a certain representative?
I believe so. It's been a while since I've actually like read about it. It's in its like inception, yeah. It's like after people vote, you can unfairly redraw districts so that you get like a certain number of like representative votes that you wouldn't have gotten if the districts were just fairly drawn.
Yeah, I guess I just wonder who does that. If the government has something set up in place, like where if we say, like for example, right now we have it where 51% of a vote is what makes a law go through. So that just is
Yeah.
what it is. Like Aric can't make a law go through at 49% because the law it just is what it is. So if we have like let's say gerrymandering, we say this can't be done, then it just can't be done. I can't
Well, I
imagine
mean,
where.
gerrymandering was outlawed in the 60s,
Is
I
it something
believe,
you would
and people
outlaw
are
though?
still accused of it. Absolutely.
But
It it
I
it
guess I just don't
gets
understand if something
it
is
gives
something that can't be
people
done.
like an unfair precedent to win on
N-
things that they wouldn't have
No, I'm
otherwise
saying how do
won.
you do it? Who does it?
It's kind of complicated. Politicians do it. Like it's a thing that happens in a higher side of political society, like governors and representatives for states and things like that.
Well, let's see what Vape has to say on it. I don't know if it's different in India or whatever. So who does the gerrymandering?
So almost every party does it. It's not illegal, and the situation is so bad that like it's right now we know that 80% of people are not happy with the current government. But the way they advertise things, the way are buying people who are already elected, you can't do anything. Now you can't throw them back. You just can't do
Well,
anything.
well,
So
hold on.
situation
Let's
is
try.
so
Let's
bad.
try
I
to
think he means specifically like what types of people do it,
like how
who in the
can a
government.
human do it? Who has the right to do it? And I don't. I'm just trying to understand. So if let's say that in our society that we have our made up one, let's say we split it into states. And in our society, we have 50 states,
Okay.
kind of like the U.S. has. But let's say every state has 1 million people. And then that million people, every state has 10 districts. So every 100,000 people
Okay.
are represented by a representative. Okay. So
Okay.
who decides which 100,000 where they're at when you draw a line on the map to say this 100 is represented in District 1 and this 100 represented District 2? Who gets to pick that? In the real world and
No.
then also in ours.
So it should be like, okay, there are 100,000 people. This is the
Mm-hmm.
state. This state has XYZ population, like 1 million. So
Mm-hmm.
these are different groups. There is no line, literal line or no hypothetical line. We just know that this is the different area. This is the different area code now. So the person
Mm-hmm.
elected from here is an individual. We don't need to redefine it every time.
Okay,
So he's
but
saying like in the
if we
real
have
world, how does it get done?
like if we
Like,
have representatives, so in the U.S. anyway. So I'm not sure with India, but in the U.S., every state will have a certain amount of representatives. The representatives represent an area, and then their job is to basically represent what the people want. So senators decide their own thing, separate from what the people want, and they have 6-year terms. Representatives have 2-year terms, and they are supposed to represent the people. And if they don't represent the majority of the people, then the majority of the people can vote them out. But you can only vote for the person in your district. And so gerrymandering is the idea of what part of the map is a certain district. So District 1 in Oregon, the state I live in, would be a certain section, and it's a certain population. It's a certain number of people, the same as District 2. So what I'm trying to say is I can see there being concern for trying to like do a certain thing where you fit the right amount of people in, but where you're pulling, like, let's say the Democrats want there to be less Republicans in District 2, and so they put as many Republicans in District 1 as they can while still keeping their a majority of Democrats. And so they move that amount over. So now District 1 and District 2 will have equal amounts of Republicans, but just barely more Democrats, like or the other way around. This is kind of what gerrymandering is thought of to do, is to basically steal
Yes.
part of the demographic. Okay, yeah. So my questions are, who does that, and how do we decide who does it? Somebody has to do it, right?
People are doing it. So what happens is there is two different areas. What they'll do, they'll support the one area which has more population, and they will legally combine those two areas. Okay, this is your XYZ village. Now
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't exist. Now you are the part of this ABC village.
Yep.
Now those people in XYZ village, a smaller group, don't have any voting power, and that's what happens here.
So what are you saying should
So
happen?
I want
That's
to
what I'm trying to
outlaw
figure out.
that.
But
No
then what
government
happens
should have
instead
a
of it?
power to in if there is two localities, government should not have a power to combine them
Okay, so let's just make this
or
as
divide
simple as
them.
possible. Let's just make this as simple as possible.
Mhm.
Inside of our society, in our fake society, there is a state that has 1
Okay.
million people. So 50 states, each one has 1 million
Mhm.
people. So we're gonna take one. We're just gonna call this state V. The state is called V. There's 1 million people in it. Do you think it's fair to say that we should have 10 representatives for this million?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So if there's 10 representatives and approximately 100,000 people are represented each by a representative, I'm trying to figure out what is the right way to do that and what is the wrong way to do that.
Okay. Okay. Now finally I got your question. So if there is
Okay.
an area, a huge place, a huge city. So cities have different areas.
Mhm.
So we have to do whatever we decide once. Like this is the area, this is the one area which for one individual. We can't change that in future. We have to keep it as it is, no matter what. What I'm against is changing that thing. Because when you change it to fit your ideas and fit your goals, that's the problem. You can educate people, but when they relocate or uh, when the actual their senator is changed, they have to vote someone, or their vote is going to waste. So what I'm against is whoever does it. Maybe we should have an election commission. So those people can do it, but it shouldn't change. Once it's fixed, it's fixed. We are not changing it anymore.
Okay. I see. Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Now, I think that'll be a tough one to bring up until, because Contrarian 420 points out over here, he says, have we confirmed it is a representative government? So we're talking about this idea of there being representatives. And in the Society Project, we have not confirmed this. We haven't decided that we're going to have a president and senators and representatives. So to answer his question, what I want to do is to take the Constitution of the U.S. and to take pieces of it and have us all decide, well, if we would want to imitate that. So if we took something like, let's say we took the First Amendment and we just looked at it and we all decided, oh, we want to change this. We want to add this word or take out this word. And then we'd say, oh yeah, this is good. We like this. And then we have that be there. And then, so same thing, would be with having a government or whatever. We could look and go, okay, how many representatives do we want? We could base it off different things. We could say, oh, in India, this happens, which is better than in the U.S., or in Canada, this happens. And we could change it however we want. But I think a good starting point would be to take the U.S. Constitution and adjust from there.
I agree.
And so maybe before doing this law on the gerrymandering, we should get our Constitution in place. And then part of the Constitution could involve no gerrymandering, because I don't know how I would vote on it at this point without having more of an idea. Not that how I would vote matters. We could put it to a vote even without doing that. I just think it might be best if we do.
Right now, it
Okay.
doesn't make much sense. When you asked me 5 things, I said 5 things I am kind of worried about nowadays.
Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha.
Have you checked in with the other guy yet?
I did, and he did not answer, so we're good to go. We
All right.
we can keep talking for a while. Okay, so the next
Okay,
one is
before we go
outline.
further-
What?
I was saying before we go further, I had a question for Aric.
Okay. Well, I gotta pee really bad, so you guys
so-
talk. I'll be right back.
So yeah. Sure. That works. So Aric, you are as far as I remember, you are a vegan, right?
No.
No. Okay.
I am
thought you are a
receptive to
vegan
the
and
ideas, but I
in
am
my
not.
mind. Okay, so in my mind, you are a vegan, and you said that I have a fishing rods, and that confused me. I was like, what the hell is going on here? Why that vegan guy is have fishing rods?
No. See,
Because the first thing is
like I'm receptive to the idea. I understand like the moral structure and everything. It's just that there are a lot of obstacles in my way to it. We talked about that yesterday. I said that like it's part of the reason that I don't begrudge people who can't afford veganism, because it is generally not a very simple or very cheap thing to do. Yeah. But fishing is a a pretty common local pastime around here. Like there's a few areas that people like to congregate and fish because there's good fishing, but most of it is like catching jack, and jack are not very good, and you have to like bleed them as soon as you catch them. So most people just catch them because they're fun and then throw them back. You're supposed to have like an air bladder syringe to make sure they don't float when you toss them back in, stuff like that. Yeah, we don't go fishing all that often right now because we all work so much, but when we can, we do.
Okay, so
Most
Carson
of
is
the time,
back.
it's
We can
not to like
continue.
keep.
Thanks.
Okay, I am back. I actually got to make a phone call in a sec, which I'll do while we're chatting, but I'll mute myself. Okay, so the next one is outlawing revenge porn. Can you, Vapehav, can you remind me what revenge porn is?
Sure. So let's say there is a couple in relationship. They decided to record themselves, which is fine and legal. But once they break up, and one of them put that information on internet to make for
Without the
monetary
consent of
purposes
the
or
other
for
person.
any other, that's the problem. And that's on. So I have seen the graphs. Graphs is like this since 2008, because the way we have access to internet and cameras at the same time now, it's going extremely bad, and suicide cases because of this, especially for girls, are really bad.
Oof.
Oh yeah, they're generally what it is like as he said, it's like two people be together and they decide they're going to record something. Some abusive people will do that without the other person knowing, so that they can hold it over them, which is great. But they do this, and then when they break up as like a form of retribution or to just like hurt the other person, they'll post the video and then make it known who they are to try to get them like social repercussions, and it can have really, really negative effects on people.
Interesting. Okay. Does it mostly
So
happen to
the
adults?
the idea is completely remove
Mostly.
the concept of revenge porn.
Gotcha. Okay. I think I'm going to lean towards voting no on this just because freedoms and such, but I think it's a good thing to vote on. I'm kind of curious to see how it goes.
Well, so like that's something that I don't think falls under freedoms, because like it's all, if it's revenge porn, it's done without the consent of the other person. So like it's done specifically to hurt them. That's why it's called revenge porn.
Yeah, I know
It's
what you
like-
mean. Well,
yeah.
well, tell me about this then. Obviously, this is going to be a way less big of a deal. But like, so as of right now, I think it's perfectly legal to take pictures of people in public. You can. It's part of free speech, free expression.
Yeah,
I can.
You can
take a
record anybody in a public space that's
I
not.
can just open my
that doesn't
phone up
include a reasonable expectation for privacy.
Yeah, I can open my phone up and just go to a random family sitting at a cafe outside and take a picture of them. And it doesn't matter. And so it's totally fine. And so in the same sense, I can just have my camera out and wait for somebody that's picking their nose and take a picture of it and then put it on social media to hopefully embarrass them a whole bunch for some whatever reason. I think as long as something's done legally, that there's I just don't see the problem. I do see the concern. I see the reason to think it's douchey to not be friends with the person. I don't think I'd want to outlaw
like it
but
directly correlates with suicides. Like that's part of the problem. Is
yeah,
it's not something so small as like it embarrasses them. It's like, I'm going to share this to your family. I'm going to share this to your friends. I'm going to put it online. I'm going to put your name in it so that people know who you are. It's something that's done deeply maliciously.
yeah.
And the
No, it's
only gain is like
Exactly.
hurting people and causing
Yeah.
them.
And
like,
websites
sometimes it's
allowing
fucked up.
that shit is also bad.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's fucked up. I just it's just like I don't know what it would take to get me to want to outlaw what I view as freedoms, like kind of like the free speech thing. We're currently voting on should it be illegal to use the N-word as an insult, and like I don't there wouldn't be a certain amount of like black people killing themselves because of the N-word that would lead me to say, okay, it should be illegal now. It wouldn't matter if it was half the population of them. Same thing with white people. If cracker offended people enough that half of the white people.
Be
were
careful,
killing
you can
themselves.
get pinned on that one.
Oh, Gotcha.
There's been a couple of Twitch streamers that have been taken down for that.
Gotcha. But yeah, anyways, I think it's a great law to vote on. It'll be cool to vote on it. Okay, the next one is, should we outlaw advertisements or sale of high sugar, low nutrition foods to children? This is cool that you got this one in there because Aric had the outlaw high fructose corn syrup. Okay, so let's look at them separately. Let's look at advertising. So advertising high sugar, low nutrition foods. What are you guys' thoughts?
So maybe
We
there's
already
some delay.
outlawed the advertising of
but,
like cigarettes. Yeah.
Vaibhav, what that?
So yeah, okay. So there is some delay. So I might be coming a little late. So the entire idea here is, don't advertise it as a healthy food. If you're gonna advertise it, tell us on advertisement what is it. Don't attach it with Dexter, the laboratory, or Benton, because kids don't think about themselves. Chocolates are inherently unhealthy, but that's fine because it's a part of culture now. But there are other things which has no value as a food, but still
When was the last time you saw
they
a commercial for
can
Lucky
advertise
Charms?
how
Cars?
they want.
Like,
So
Oh,
the
yeah.
entire problem is false advertisement and hurting kids.
Yeah.
it's like the reason I said Lucky Charms is because Lucky Charms, I don't know if they still do, but when I was a kid, they always said like with 7 vitamins and minerals in there, and they don't talk about the sugar. They portray it like it's part of a healthy breakfast. They always say that
Yeah.
part of a healthy nutritional breakfast, and they always have it sitting on a tray with like oranges and other shit that's actually good to eat. But
Yeah.
like, there's a lot of cereals like Cocoa Puffs and cereals like that that'll say like we have 7 vitamins and minerals in our cereal that are good for your healthy bones. But it's like, yeah, but that's also like 700 grams of sugar per serving. Like
Yeah.
they advertise it like it's a lot healthier than it is.
Yeah, I think we'd have to specify, like, if we wanted them. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we could outlaw it completely, but outlawing advertisement, we'd have to get specific on it as well. We'd have to
Yeah.
say
So I
outlawing
have changed.
advertising.
So when I was writing this, I was kind of tired and didn't think about it. So I am only against the advertisement. The sell part was unintentional. So I think advertisement is a bad thing, but people can sell whatever they want. Buying is our choice, and we are there to take care, make sure that our kids are eating healthy food. But when it comes on TV, including kids and adults, both can think like, okay, it's a healthy food. Okay, we are not ready to accept that people in books, people in news, people in TV lies. And if we are not ready, so I think we should make sure that, okay, we know this is bad for society. Even if we are contradicting with ourselves, let's do this uh, for the for the good. Whatever, I can't remember the word.
As an example,
good.
we already like outlaw cigarettes being advertised to children because the way they used to advertise like camels was with cartoons of Camel Joe, and he was in like a leather jacket and he looked all cool. And the idea was to like kind of sort of convince kids that this was a good idea.
Oh,
Like, what was the last thing you heard?
just the outlawing cigarette ads for kids.
Okay, so like Camel Joe was a cartoon, and it made camels out to be like, see, look, it's in a cartoon, kids. Why don't you try a pack of camels today? Like it was very clearly meant to advertise towards children. So now we don't allow that. Like they don't. When vaping first started getting really big, they allowed you to have little competitions and stuff like that. Like I used to do that for extra money, and now that's not legal to do because it's advertising a tobacco product. We already kind of have things that you can't advertise in very specific ways because it would wrongfully portray the item, especially towards children. Alcohol is another one. Like you can't have alcohol be advertised with cartoons that make it look like it's just goof juice that kids can have and it'll be fine. You have to advertise it in a very specific way. Cigarettes are the same way if you even have ads for cigarettes, which generally are just like cardboard cutouts in the windows of gas stations now. So like if
They
you were
use a
to say like
surrogacy
you can't,
advertisement for that.
yeah, like if you would say like you can't advertise Lucky Charms and Cocoa Puffs and Cocoa Krispies to kids because it would make them want it more because it's all just sugar and it's not good for them, then there would be different ways you could go about advertising it. Like Special K doesn't advertise to kids at all, but their cereals still look appealing in the show in the advertisement. So you could do that with Cocoa Krispies if you want, if you wanted to make it so the ads were specifically for adults, and then if the adults chose to give it to their kids, that would be another conversation. But it would be not advertising that specifically to children.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's tricky and complicated, but we can do it. Vaibhav, what did you say you want to reword it now?
Yeah, so I want to remove the sell part. I want to keep the advertisement part.
Oh, I see. Okay. So outlaw advertisement for high sugar and low nutrition foods. What if it's high sugar and high nutrition foods?
The sugar outbalances the nutrition if it's high
So,
sugar.
so we know since we are manufacturing sugar and we have a method to make clear sugar with glass quality, we are seeing that how quickly people are getting fat. So this is not for dispute. So if it's
Oh, you're cutting out.
I thought that was me again.
Nope. Oh, and he's frozen. It's a cool image, though. It's always weird when it freezes on like a really bad one. Yeah, this is just a topic that's really hard to figure out exactly how to word. Oh, he's back. Okay, go on.
yeah, so if there's a 12-year-old kid and we have 50 or 60 grams of sugar per serving, we know it's not good. We know it's dangerous. So just don't advertise it. If you want to do it
Well,
cardboard in malls, that's a different thing. But
Well,
on
what are we
TV,
gonna
on
mean
roads,
by
that's the problem.
what do we mean by serving?
Per serving,
Generally, a
for
serving
example,
size
if
for
there's
something
you just said
dry
cookies are
is
really
like
bad.
Say it
if
again.
Parents want to feed their if parents want to feed their kids poison, it's fine. But we shouldn't, as a society, allow that to companies. Shouldn't be doing that. Companies, if
No,
there
I
is a
hear
cookie
you.
which
I
have
hear what you're
like
saying. We just have to get specific with the wording.
okay,
If you're
so
saying a certain amount of, well, okay, Eric, go ahead, and then I'll respond to
a serving usually, at least according to nutritionists, for something like cereal is if you take a tennis ball and cut it in half, whatever fills up that tennis ball is about half a cup. That is one serving. That's why if you look at like a bottle of Coke, it'll say like 240 calories per serving, but if you look at the back, it says there's 2 servings in the bottle.
that.
It's serving sizes are generally agreed on by nutritionists. There are some things that don't do that, like Tic Tacs. Tic Tacs say there's 0 sugar, but that's because 1 serving is 1 Tic Tac. Tic Tacs are all sugar, but they weigh less than half a gram. So because there's less than half a gram per serving, they can say there's 0 sugar. It's serving sizes can be deceptive, but generally speaking, when you look at a nutritionist defined serving, it's half a cup of something. That's the go-to most of the time.
Gotcha. Yeah. Again, we can vote on anything. This sounds a bit too not detailed for me. Just imagining how to put a law on something. If we are specifying a serving size, at least for our society, we should explain what we mean by that. And it could be kind of like what Eric's saying. It could even be based on calorie count. It could be based on whatever. But saying that there's a certain amount of processed sugar in a serving, we just need to know what that means exactly. So
Yeah.
let's say anything above 10% of sugar in its quantity is not allowed. If you are eating 100 grams of sugar, 100 grams of cookies, you are also eating like 10 grams of sugar. So that's not allowed. Anything below that, we can do it.
and
So
that's
this is
not
not the
allowed to
number
have
I'm
ads.
proposing.
No advertisement at all, or just no advertisements that a reasonable person would say is aimed towards children.
No advertisement in parks, TV, internet, or in roads where kids are. If it's in a mall, kids are going with the family. Family sees sees the poster, they are like, okay, just have one. In that situation, it's fine because we need to understand the businesses have to run themselves. But if they have a pressure, they'll make healthy food.
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
this would be a cool thing to put to a vote. We just got to figure out how to word it because it's really
I'll
complicated.
I'll I'll, I'll
Because with
send
a
it to you.
okay, because with a mall, with a family, that's one thing. But what if a kid's by themselves at the mall, and the family's not seeing it, and the kid has their own money, and kids can buy their own stuff. So a 10-year-old with money is in a candy shop seeing these posters and ads at a mall. Yeah, but yeah. Anyways, you should write it up, and we can work on it, and that'd be cool.
What a
Um,
fucking waste of money. Oh no, not
uh,
you guys. There's a guy that just drove by with a truck with a lift kit on it that probably cost him $150,000.
We all
That
heard, yeah.
okay, so Vape Hav's last one, which I'm gonna Vape Have, since we're gonna save the gerrymandering one for after we figure out a constitution. I'm gonna have you create a new fifth one. But the last one you have on here is, should we remove solitary confinement in prisons?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I got to make a quick call, but yeah, you two should talk about that real quick, and then after you talk about that, Vabe Have, you should come up with one more law proposal you want to do, since we're going to do the gerrymandering later. I'm just going to mute
Sure.
myself and make a quick call.
No problem.
We should absolutely get rid of solitary confinement as a punishment. But I think that it should be an option for prisoners, like if they want to be alone, if they don't feel like they're safe having cellmates, then they can choose to be put in solitary. But it shouldn't be like the shoe, like it is now, where
So,
you barely get fed and you're kept with no stimulation or anything like that.
so solitary confinement are not rooms to sit alone. Those are specifically there to punish people, violent people, or someone who is
Oh no,
danger to themselves. So
no,
we
I
need
know.
to
That's
find a
why I
bet.
made the
Yeah,
caveat that I did.
yeah.
Solitary
So we
confinement
need
is
to
a
find a
horrifying
better
thing to
way to
do.
do it instead of just putting them in a room where there is no colors. Because psychological pressures towards someone for no good
Oh yeah,
reason.
they have hallucinations in those cells. Like they
Of
barely feed them
course.
while they're there. They have hallucinations that can cause really severe mental detriment. They start to hear voices that aren't there. They
Okay.
don't have
Data
access to
shows,
commissary when they're in solitary confinement. There's a lot of downsides to it, like the
Okay.
Quaker.
data shows that those people are extremely violent as well.
Let me ask a couple questions just to clarify, and then maybe reword it or slightly tweak it.
Mhm.
So what happens if somebody does something bad enough that normally would put them in solitary confinement? What do we do? Like if they're just violent with other inmates or something?
Put them in a single cell by themselves, but don't make it the like absolute hell on their senses that the SHU is now. SHU is like solitary housing unit. It's SHU, it's shorthand. But
Gotcha.
like when you go to solitary in prison, it's a white room with lights in it all the time that just doesn't have windows. They usually don't feed you very well when you're there. You don't have access to commissary. It can have really, really detrimental effects on your psychological health and your physical health because you're not being fed properly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Vape Have,
I agree
what
with
are your
him.
thoughts?
Yeah, exactly
Okay,
the
same
same
thing.
thing.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. So we aren't wanting to outlaw solitary confinement. We're wanting to outlaw elements of how it's currently done. So it's okay to put somebody in a location that they cannot get out of, where they are by themselves, but we want to change a couple things. So is one of the aspects that we want to change the color, the white walls?
It
Colors,
makes
they should
the
have windows, they should have
yeah.
a method to be able to communicate outside. Because the goal is to keep others and that person safe. We
Hmm.
can do it without torturing that person. So how do they torture? It's white everywhere, or I have seen somewhere red.
Hmm.
So it's white
They
or
can't
red.
tell
Some
how time
entirely
passes.
you
That's
don't
a
have
big part of
walls. You don't have enough space to stand sometimes.
it. Hmm.
So these things are part of torture. We don't
Okay.
want to do that. We want to keep you safe. That's the goal here.
Okay. Well, I think in this case we want to keep everybody else safe from the person, but we also
And that person
maybe
safe as well.
A lot of
sure.
people who have like bad charges when they go to prison, they will constantly keep themselves in trouble so they can stay in solitary. Generally speaking, you would want to have like solo cells that they could choose to be in.
Exactly.
that have a window so that you can tell when time passes.
Gotcha.
That have like, because that's one of the big problems is they don't shut the lights off in the shoe. So while
Okay.
you're there, you could be in there for 6 months. You have no fucking idea how long you're there because you can't see the day night cycle. They don't turn off the lights. All you
Gotcha.
can track is when they give you food, and it's not frequent. So it's
Okay.
hard to tell.
Okay. Okay. So I'm imagining a prison, giant building. Every single cell that isn't one that's on the border of the prison, like the outer layers, there couldn't be a window. So is the idea that we should design prisons to not be big buildings? They should be separate rows where every cell would have to have a window?
Well, prisons
When,
already only put cells on the
Well,
outside
hold on.
edge
Let me
because you
let
have to
me
be able to
let me
control them.
focus on Vabehab just for a sec, just because
so
yeah.
so when I say window, I'm not. I don't want to say that. Okay, they should be able to see out the outside world. That's not necessarily the thing, but
Mhm.
they should be able to see the outside when it's a part of the prison, part of other people, to feel like that they're still human. Because this idea was came in like 1840s or something, and it was a method to torture people. It
Mhm.
wasn't the idea was never to keep others or them safe. It was a method to torture people. And Germany came up with this. America
Mhm.
adopted, India adopted those ideas. But but now we are saying, okay, we have to keep others and that person safe. Then why that place is so small? Why that place don't have colors? Why that place don't have windows? You can make chain windows which will not break, and no one will be able to bang their head on those windows. We have a method. The
Gotcha.
only problem we have is not we don't have a will. And prisons have to be redesigned. The prisons I don't know about yours, but the kind of prisons we have, people can't tell if it's a day or night in if they are inside the barricade, and it's really bad. Like absolutely no view from outside, and it's really
Gotcha.
bad. I went to prison for some work, not as a criminal, but it was really bad. And
Mhm.
those people didn't have beds. There was no privacy. Imagine not being able to masturbate. That's a problem. It's funny,
That
but
sounds like
but
something to
think
laugh
about it.
at, but like really, that's like the only joy you have in prison. Like that's all you have to pass the time. That or
Wow.
And
reading. You don't get to do that in the shoe. You don't get to read. Like you have no stimulation at all.
access to newspapers, like basic things. People should have access to newspapers. They don't have. If we are putting them in prison, they should be able to have newspapers, books, and they don't have to pay for it.
Gotcha.
Because we
Uh,
are the one taking away their right, their freedom. Doesn't matter for what. That's a different part.
gotcha.
There
The
there is one other thing that I don't know if they do this in India, but if they deem you like a threat to yourself, they don't put you in contact with somebody to help you. They don't like try to figure out what's wrong. They wrap you in what they call the blue burrito. It's basically a 7 or 8 inch blue mat that just restricts your whole body, and they just toss you on the floor for 12 hours and then unbuckle it so you can use the bathroom and eat. You can barely
It's
breathe
worst
in
in
it.
India.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
really?
worst in India. They call it Naka Bandi. What they do
Hmm.
is they'll tie your both hands like this on two sides and
Oh,
your legs on the ground, and now you can't move or do
oh
anything at
God, that
all.
is terrible for your
So
fucking
just because
shoulders.
I wanted to bang my head on the wall, now I'm being tortured like this. This is what happens in India.
That is
Every
also
chain.
something they used to do in like the Hanoi Hotel, the whole like the camps for the POWs. They would do that to them a lot because like anytime you start to fall asleep, anytime you try to sag, it starts to tear away at your shoulders. It can
Yeah,
dislocate your shoulders. It can cause like muscle tears. It's really bad.
it's
okay.
inhumane. And if we are putting people in jail, we have to make sure that we are treating them, no matter what, still as humans.
Yeah, they're people at the
Yeah.
end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So on that one, I think we're gonna have to figure out a good way to word it. So Vabe, have just think of a couple things you want the details to be. So instead of remove solitary confinement, it might need to be something like you pick your least favorite aspect of it and say we make it illegal to do this in jail. and then that can be what it
Well,
I
is.
don't think I
removing
can do it right
solitary
now, but
confinement.
I'll so
Rem-
solitary confinement has to be removed. That entire box has to
mhm.
be removed, and we need to put something else there.
That
That
is
box isn't.
something that you don't really need to be super specific about because we've had data on this for a really, really long
Well,
time.
no, I'm saying
There is
be
no
specific
cause and effect.
because obviously
Yeah,
outside of how
not.
we define. Well, hold on one sec. Outside of how we define it now, obviously solitary confinement is a need. It's a must.
Well, solitary confinement used as a punishment isn't.
Yeah,
Like generally, like that's why I had said earlier, like you should be able to choose to be in your own cell. Like if you are somebody who's in prison for life, the moment a single person cell comes up, you are first in line to choose it. Because if you're there for life, you might just kill somebody who's in your cell if you don't like them because what are they going to do? Give you more time?
yeah.
So they give you that kind of freedom to have your own
But we
cell. And we
but
could just get rid of the shoe, like the solitary housing unit,
yeah,
and just have single
I don't know
cells.
what a shoe is. What I'm trying to say is that the
Oh, what
words
we've been explaining is what the shoe is.
that's fine. What I'm saying is the
I'll
words.
write it in a better way. I'll write it
Yeah,
in a
no,
better way,
you didn't write it
more
in a bad
specific.
way. What I mean is because we're creating our own new society, we want to be specific on what we mean by it. So if we change solitary confinement to be what you guys would find to be the best outcome to do what the prisons are trying to do to the people, but have a great outcome, you could still call that solitary confinement because it'd be solitary and it'd be confinement. So unless I'm missing something, as long as we're going to have a thing where if somebody was bad enough in prison that they need to be put in an area they can't get out of and they're by themselves, that is solitary confinement. So we are just saying that we want to improve solitary confinement. I get that there's a bad connotation to the words combined,
Yeah.
but it's probably better for us to figure out what that is.
So I'll write it in a way that it's mentioning everything I want and everything I don't want.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. And so let's come up with a fifth one.
I have already. I have
What you
something in
got?
mind.
Okay.
Every school, not high school, not college, but every school must have a uniform, and you have to follow that
No.
unless it's a religion based something. You, for example, if you have a hijab or you have a pagdi which Sikhs wear or something like that, if you want to wear a cross, it's fine.
What
But
if your religion
uh,
says you can't wear uniforms at all?
in that case, you can't attend the school. You
Okay.
have to
I
wear the
I
uniform.
Eric
I
wants to
have
tell you why you're
actually
wrong.
so having uniforms on its face does seem like a good idea, but when you look at like part of early schooling is the learning how to be social. It's learning like who you are. It's like spreading out as a person and removing the ability for people to dress themselves how they want removes their individuality. It's like the first thing that cults and cult like schools like the Elan school does is they take away your clothes and they put you in a uniform because it strips away a big part of your individuality. So like having kids be able to dress how they want if they can afford to is actually really important for psychological health.
Carson, you go, then I'll clear myself.
Um, I I don't even have thoughts about it other than I'm not in favor of it. I think we can put anything to a vote. The reason I would recommend not putting this to a vote is because I don't think you'll get more than one person. This would be like Jeffrey putting to a vote if we should have no government. I just think it's probably best to put things to a vote where there's a likelihood of there being like 2 or 3 out of the 25 people that would say it. But yeah, let's hear your argument for it. I think it's worth putting anything to a vote.
So, do we accept that we have a problem of poverty?
Poverty? No, but let's say we do.
The thing is, we have that problem, and every school, even the most expensive school, sometimes give scholarships to the kids who can't afford it. And the government schools, kids can't afford clothing. If we think they can, and we as a parent most of the times, okay, I'll buy you 10 t-shirts and 10 jeans. that's fine. But not every kid have that access. And when
Hmm.
kids don't have new things, good things to wear in schools, they are being bullied. And this is something I have faced because I have, like, right now I have 4 t-shirts, not because of money, because I have some moral issues with having anything extra than I need. So, but there are people who actually can't afford these things, and they are in between the people who can. Now these big kids are being bullied for being poor. They are struggling. Their education is being hampered, and this is something I can show you data for. And if you can say 40% of kids by putting uniforms in place, I don't see a problem with it. We can have one Saturday uniformless day. That's fine. We kids want to be themselves. It's a great idea, but for the most 6 days, 5 days or 4 days, whatever, I don't know how there it is, how it's in USA, but for the most part, kids should have uniforms. That's the entire argument, and I have seen that it
I'm
helps.
I'm not sure about India, but in America, every school that I've ever been to that required uniforms, they were expensive. Like like for example, I had to go to alternative school when I was in middle school because there's this kid that kept fucking with me, and he would like start fights with me and then get his friends to say that I did it so that we would both get in trouble. And when you go to alternative school, you're there on a court mandate. So you have to wear a very specific type of shoe. You have to wear a specific type of pants. You can't wear jeans. You have to wear slacks or Dickies. You have to wear button up white polo shirts, which are very hard to keep from getting stained. You
So,
have to wear a specific type of leather belt. So you have to have this every day. And there are still ways for kids to pick on you for being poor when you have uniforms, because if you don't have enough uniforms, it becomes very apparent very quickly because you
so,
can't afford to get more than one or two, and wear and tear starts to show. And then everybody goes, oh, look at you, you're so poor, you can't even afford to have more than one uniform. Like it can
so,
still happen that way. I'm not so sure about India. It might be cheaper there, but here it's been expensive.
so, Eric, we spoke yesterday for you, this morning for me. We spoke already, and I am in favor of free healthcare, free education. I don't know how it works in USA, but in India, if there's a kindergarten teacher, she's buying supply for entire class. This is
It's like that
the
here too.
worst. Oh,
No,
so
here the students buy the supplies and take it
Oh,
to
teachers
school.
do too. It's
Oh.
both.
yeah, it's really bad here. I don't know how. So when it comes to education, education should be free. We are supposed to provide clothing, but we can't provide different clothing. We can't provide, oh, you like jeans, I'm going to give you a denim.
Mhm.
That's not something even remotely possible. So what we can do, we can provide uniforms. We can provide 3 4 shirts and 3 4 pants, maybe couple of couple sets of shoes. We can fix these things and remove the major issue, because when a kid comes to school, that kid is not richer than and someone else, or not poor than someone else. There should be a unity, and uniforms do clarify that. And I can show you data that it really helps with the overall education system, the overall mentality of kids. And there might be harms, but those harms are way less than the real benefits.
It, like I said, I'm not very familiar with India specifically, but in America generally, like maybe it's because like a bigger multitude of clothes are available in cheaper fashion. Like denim is not very expensive unless you buy name brand denim. Like I can buy a pair of jeans for $11, or actually, if I get them on sale, I can get them for $4, and they're black jeans, and they'll last me a year. But like out here, like what it ends up boiling down to is if you have uniforms, sometimes they'll let you like wear like a little bit of jewelry, or they'll let you wear like a necklace or a different pair of shoes, and they'll just find a reason to pick on you for that. Or like if your
So,
backpack's a little ratty, they'll be like,
Well,
"Look, you're fucking
I
poor."
think
Like
we
it
I think we
still
have to
boils down that way
accept
out
I
here.
think we
Yeah.
have to accept the idea of what Vape has going for. Anything that you could mention could just be removed and you could answer it with that. So if you're saying that you can wear jewelry and then people get picked on for that, then Vapehav can just say no jewelry. If you're saying that there's possible stains or only one uniform, then Vapehav can say, okay, well, you're supplied, like everybody's supplied exactly 5 uniforms, no more, no less. So you just Aric, I actually think you're right, but I don't think it's because with the uniforms you can still be picked on, though.
I mean, it's also that kids are like merciless. You don't have to be poor for people to pick on you. Like it's. I know that it can help remove a section of that, but bullies are going to be bullies. It's
Of course
gonna
there'll
happen.
be, but I clarified that in the start. I said if you have anything other than uniform, which is which is connected to your religion, it's okay. We are not gonna let kids in homes for this reason. Because if you can't, if you say that you can't wear a cross in America, I don't think parents will be like, "Oh, it's fine. My kid will remove cross and will then I will send him." That I don't think that will happen. So whatever is connected to religion, let's keep it. Anything else we can remove.
Well, religion is also a way that people end up picking on each other. I'm not. Again, I'm not
Well,
totally
yeah, but
sure
that's
about
We
the
can
idea.
voluntarily
train for
done.
that. We can train kids. We can teach kids about these things. That's why I told Carson, teaching empathy is important. But this guy,
Yeah.
But like if you're
Um,
like when I was in school, it might not be so bad now, but when I was in school, there were girls who were afraid to wear hijabs because they knew they'd get like beat up at school because like
fuck,
post 9/11 that kind of shit went crazy. But like it's just like kids are gonna bully each other for everything. Like
and
people
that's
pick
why
on
we
people for
should
that's
fix
wearing
a
one
things.
issue
horrible
and fix
argument,
it.
though. That's a
No, I
horrible
mean,
argument.
no, I'm
We
saying
need to
like it's
fix
not an
one thing at a
argument for
time.
why. No, I'm not saying that's an argument for why we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that's why the bullying thing isn't super receptive for me. It's that like personally, when it's come down to uniforms, they just find
It's
other reasons. But like uniforms
it's
can have a lot of benefits, but there are some downsides that you can have
it's
that
one
can
of the
actually be
thing,
really detrimental.
and it's one of the thing your parents can't help you with. If someone's is bullying someone with, "Oh, you are poor, you don't have money," and that kid goes to parent and say, "This is what I've been told." Parents actually can't help with it, other than they can
Yeah,
go to principal's office and whatever. But
yeah, I got bullied for
the,
that. Yeah.
if we fix it in the start, it's more likely. I'm this is based on emotions. I'm not gonna present data for this, but this is more likely. I think that kids will be friends. There will be less chances of someone being a bully. And the thing is, if I got bullied, I am like, oh, I this is sad for me. Think about the person who was a bully for his entire life, and we didn't do anything to fix that person, because that
Yeah.
person is gonna regret at some time. So we
Hmm.
have one thing which we can actually fix easily. Why
A
not do
lot of
it?
people are bullies
Yeah.
because they get abused at home. Like
Uh,
that's usually a big correlator is that they get bullied at
let's
their
not go.
houses.
Let's not go there. I mean, just because we don't got too much time, but I will say one thing that of why I lean towards liking the uniform idea. I'm not fully on board. I'll probably vote no for it, but the reason I lean towards liking it is I have a very. I'm the only person that holds this feeling. I actually do think there should be kind of dress codes, because
Hmm.
I hate the idea of in high school there being distractions. I remember when I was in high school, if a lady's showing a lot of cleavage or wearing a mini skirt or whatever, it's really hard to get your schoolwork done. And so a lot of people hate that idea. They think, oh, girls are discriminated against. They're
I
told they
mean,
can't wear
heavily.
spaghetti strap whatever and this that or the other. And
Well, they say
I
that
kind
girls are
of
discriminated against by them because they more heavily regulate girls. I think that if you're gonna have
yeah.
dress codes, they should equally like regulate
Well, yeah, but
each other.
what's there to
Of
regulate with a
course,
guy? You're
There
showing too
are
much of your
like cultural
bulge.
signifiers. There's like
you
different
can't
types
whip
of
out your penis.
clothing.
That's the only rule.
Yeah.
There's
Wait, Aric,
like
I'm
there
curious to
are
hear. Yeah.
things that guys do specifically that you could add to dress codes that could lead to better outcomes. But
Like what?
generally speaking, I don't know, like You can't wear like Jordans to school because it's a status symbol, and that could lead to you
No,
using that as a reason to pick on people. Like there's a bunch of
no.
shit like that. But like saying that it's a distraction kind of puts the impetus on the girls to be like, well, you shouldn't dress how you're comfortable because guys just clearly can't control themselves. It takes agency away from dudes. That's part of the reason that I don't particularly like dress codes unless it's like, don't dress in a very specific kind of way. Like there's
Mhm.
it's kind of esoteric at the end of the day, but like
Wait,
distraction is a strange reason to be
are you
for it.
saying
You
that
should,
high? Are you saying that high school boys are bad for their brains when they see women, like not women, when they see girls their age with half their boobs out,
I think
not
it's
being able to
more that
think
we
straight?
should teach them like to not gawk at people all day.
Well, who cares about the gawking? The point is, like, can they get their work done? If they
I
can't,
mean,
are we
yeah.
calling it their fault?
Generally speaking, if there was a girl in my class that had her tits out, I wasn't like bazooga zooga. Like I wasn't like staring at her the whole time. I could
I
get my
know,
fucking work done.
but
I
I'm
Like,
would do
talking
it
about.
actually. I
I'm
yeah.
would
talking
do
about
it.
if a boy is attracted to girls. I don't know if you're
Mhm.
saying that you weren't attracted to
Oh, I was.
females at that time.
I was like, I was that guy that had like a new girlfriend every 2 weeks, but it wasn't because I was like flitting between them. It's more that people would realize that being in close proximity with me for a couple of weeks was too much to handle.
I'm
But
just
like,
saying, there's nothing wrong with recognizing that a thing exists. If
yeah,
if
it's
if
it's
when
okay
people
to
hit
recognize
puberty,
it exists. It's a matter of how we handle it.
yeah,
If the
but
go-to is just like, well, tell the girls they can't do this or can't do that, don't
yeah.
expect the boys to be better.
What do you mean be better?
Like generally, you could teach people to not be like gawking at them and be like gross. If you
What's
are
wrong with it?
so preoccupied with
What
how
crime is
somebody
not a
looks
crime?
that it fucks up the way that you do your homework, that's kind of a problem. But like even without having even with those dress codes, there are still ways that people go about that, right? Like at the end of the day, the dress code doesn't really help that much anyway. But like,
It can. If you
not
It
really. I
can
mean, you
and it
can still
does,
see
but
like boobs
I don't
under a
agree
shirt.
with
You can still
Carson.
see
I
how
don't
people
agree
look.
with Carson, but I understand if there is a girl, her tits are out or a lot of cleavage, it's a distraction, but it's not a fault of a girl or that boy. It's how
Mhm.
we are designed. It's how our brain works.
Yeah.
So
And so when it comes to the time that the reason I'm okay with the uniform thing, even though I'm not in favor of it, I'm okay with it, is because there's a certain time and a certain place, and you're here to learn and you're doing this thing. And so I don't think that we should ever have our society have restrictions on what you can and can't wear out in public because we should all have this freedom. But when we send our kids to this place to learn, um, everything's different. It's kind of like that thing we were talking about where one family might not care if their 10-year-old says the word crap, and one family might not like the word crap. But in school, it can just be a thing where it's the policy that these kids don't say certain words or whatever. You have this general policy. So having a policy like you wear a uniform, or even if there's no uniforms, there's a policy that your breast can't be showing or that you can't wear a skirt that's like however many inches above the knee or whatever, is just ways of coming up with policies to try to have better education. And I'm not saying it needs to happen or anybody needs to agree with me. It's just I view it different than a typical freedom of expression or freedom of speech that would happen outside of this place for learning.
Mhm. Well, I mean, schools are places for learning primarily, but they are also like the social hub for these kids, right? Like
Yep.
at the end of the day, it's where you express yourself, it's where you make friends, it's where you learn how social connection works. It's part of the reason I don't view it in a really strict light as this is a place to learn, because realistically, that's not really how it works. Like
Then how
there's,
come you want those pro KKK books out of the library?
well, that's not exactly learning. Like that's a different thing. That doesn't even apply to this. It's like socialization
it does.
being
It does
part of
apply.
school.
It does apply.
It's well, no, not really. When you're saying like, oh, how come you don't want KKK books? Because I said school is also a place to socialize. That doesn't really tie together. School
He
is, at the
wasn't
end of the day,
doing that.
where people learn to socialize. It's where you learn how social structures work. It's where you learn how to healthily interact with other people.
It's where you learn that
And
boobs exist.
You learned that way younger than
Eric,
that.
Eric,
ah,
Eric, can I give you a homework?
I might forget to do it.
So do two things. Just think about this subject as a mindset of a parent,
Mhm.
or try to find a ways which try to find a good reasons to imply that, and just have a debate in your mind about this subject from both sides. Don't
Oh,
get stuck. If you
I've
find a
done that
good
for a
reason to,
long time. Like I used to be
yeah,
very much on the
on
other side of
uniforms,
the argument than I am now. Yeah, I've
push
had to
it
do that
forward,
for the
and it
past few
might
years.
work for you. As a parent, try and think about these things from both perspective, and it's very likely because I was against uniform my entire life. In my school, after 8th class, I never wore a single uniform because I was already 6 feet. Everyone was 4.5, and they didn't have uniforms of my size. I had to buy my clothes and make uniforms, and those things were so i- irritating personally. But
Mhm.
but the thing is, uniforms do help a lot. One less
Well,
thing to worry about is a good idea.
I think part of the reason that I'm not super for uniforms, that uniforms are rarely comfortable, and making somebody uncomfortable in a setting they already don't want to be in
Design
makes
the
them
way,
less conducive
design
to what they
uniforms
want to
the
be.
way it is comfortable. Make it,
Well, design
select
uniforms the
your
way
own
it's comfortable
colors.
would make it more expensive. The
Select all
reason
your
they're
own
not comfortable
colors.
is because they're cheap.
You are
Okay.
not buying that. Education system is providing those things. Don't worry about that.
Okay. So we can have we can have the second, or sorry, the fifth law voted on be for uniforms. If you decide you change your mind and want to do something where you have a certain dress code, then just let me know. But we can do the uniform one, and we'll see where it goes. And then it's always interesting to see how many people view something a certain way, and then adjust as we go. Real quick though, Contrarian 420 says this was based on something that was said a while back. He said, I tend to agree with Jeffrey on that. I think he meant no centralized government. Let's see. I think he meant no centralized government, just a loose group of confederated local communities. And yeah, no, I think that's what he meant. So there is zero centralized government. So if there's any issue where, say in the US, there's a group of like 1 million people get together and they're all like, they decided who their king is in Texas or something, and they want to go do all this crazy shit and gather another 1 million people and torture people or whatever. There's no centralized government that would put a stop to anything specific, and I think that's the problem. Like, I'm not even against the idea of stripping our government down to hardly anything, but I think certain things are needed. You need certain you need military, you need police, you need various different things. I think you need a fire station, that kind of thing. But I'm also in favor of different states having their own separate laws on various different things. So
And that is the case for most things. There are some federal laws, but their states have their own laws.
yeah,
This is the reason that you can have abortion in one state and you can't even have contraception in other. So these things already exist. Problem I see with these things is we have faced monarchy in past. We have seen that how people, if there is no law, one person with money can actually be a government, and people will be like, we can't do anything. That guy have a lot of manpower. You can't
That's
literally buy a. This is not. This doesn't work.
that's
Even
why I
with
have a problem with like ANCAP ideologies, because at the end of the day, that's what would happen is like the Waltons would get together and create the Walmart army and just raise towns to the ground if they didn't want to be part of the Walmart corporate conglomerate. Like it's part of the reason that I think it's completely unrealistic to follow ANCAP shit. Like it just doesn't make sense to me that that wouldn't
exactly,
happen.
it can work for like short term few months or maybe a year, but anything over that it doesn't work at all.
yeah, no, I completely agree. He's saying something about a comment on secession. That's not something I'm familiar with.
Can you Google that?
Let me Google secession. An action of withdrawing formally from membership of a federation or body, especially a political state. Huh.
Yeah, I agree with
I'm,
that.
I'm not a
That's fine.
fan of secession because, like, we've seen what happens when people secede in America, and it was a bloody, horrifying war. Like
Okay, I
secession is
found
not
it. I
something I'm
found
a
his
big
law.
fan of.
It said, "Does our society allow secession? If so, under what grounds? If so, doesn't that conflict with disallowing sovereign unities within the border?" Yeah, that could be. I'll remember that for possible things that can be voted on. That I definitely want to look into that further, but I wouldn't think so. I think there needs to be somewhat of a centralized government.
Yeah,
And
I think we should have sovereign citizens because anyone from the other side is good for society. If anyone is there to challenge your ideas time to time, it's really good. Those people are not related, but giving them a option to say in our matters who don't agree with us is a really good idea to just keep checking ourselves if we are bigoted, because you need to realize we are really talking about mass genocides of humans, mass genocides of animals. We have been talking about this, so it's a really good idea that someone from the other side is there to just tell us that this doesn't make sense, and we can think about it later.
yeah, so I think in a few days I'll send out a new thing to vote on, which would be 10 proposals, which would be each of your guys's. So Eric's and Vabe have.
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys, Vabe have, you're going to reword a couple of yours. Eric, if you think
Yes.
of different tweaks you want for yours, let me know.
I
And yeah,
believe that we were gonna have me come up with a new one instead of the public funding healthcare because of that. Like, yeah, I said I wanted to
oh,
change it for cosmetic. Right.
yeah, that's right. Yep, cosmetic. Gotcha. And I think Vabe have is on your side on that one.
Yeah,
Because you guys are crazy.
yes, we are. And Carson, we need a name for our country. Come on, I
We
really need to
do.
write. I want to write a song for our country, like national anthem. I'm dying to do that, but I can't do it without a name.
Yeah, we need a name. We also need our animal mascot, which I
Yeah.
think my favorite still is the one that Phil sent in. It's something from South America. It was like the second one sent in. But anyways, we need a
If we have an
flag.
animal mascot, I'd like to throw the pangolin into the ring because those are
Pangolin.
pangolin, Pangolin. They are
I
my
don't know what that is.
favorite fucking animals. They're like these. They kind of look,
Oh, looks like an
yeah. See,
armadillo.
a little
Can you
bit,
show
yeah. But
us?
they're like. Oh, I'm on my phone. They're like armadillos, but they have like coppery plates on them instead of being gray, and they're like they're really beautiful animals, but they're also like super dangerous because those plates are sharp, and people try to fuck with them in the wild, and they get cut up because they can.
Are
Um,
those
they're
animals? Do
cool
they
looking.
hunt? Do they hunt?
Not that I recall. If I remember right, they either eat
Because
insects or they're
I'll
herbivorous.
yeah, I'll prefer an animal who eats grass and mostly doesn't hunt, like
Well, you're in luck
non-violent
because
animal.
the picture I just took, this sucker's in grass. I don't know if he's eating the grass, but he's cute.
Oh, that is cute. That
It's like
is
a
That's
little
a
cute.
baby
armadillo.
pangolin
Yeah.
there, yeah.
Yeah.
That one's a baby pangolin. Grown pangolins have like pointier plates on them.
Okay.
They
Okay.
have like sheafy plates. They can roll themselves up.
I don't know about
Um,
you guys. I like the pig most. I am a fan of pigs.
Pigs are pretty cute. The baby elephants
So,
were cute. There's been a lot of good ones. I really like those goats that climb up the walls where I don't get how they're walking on the sides of the
mountain
like.
goats.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Those guys are
mountain
crazy.
goats.
Um,
That's really sad. They have to do it.
but
They
yeah,
have
one
really
They're
thing,
doing
crazy
it for to
balance.
eat salt, and it's really sad.
one
Like
thing,
1 out of 10 dies doing that.
really. Oh dang.
Yeah.
Somebody asked a couple questions that led to something that I think could be fun, is finding out the demographics of our senators, like where we see how many are vegan and how many are atheist or versus religious.
That's a good idea.
Just having a handful of different things,
I
like
have
which
a strong
countries people are
feeling
from.
that I'm going to be the only one of like two different demographics.
Gotcha.
Especially considering that I'm a self-ascribed socialist, I might be the only one, maybe one other.
Yeah, I don't know if we should have like something where everybody says what political party they feel like they align with. We could do that. But yeah, it'd be interesting just to have a list showing like how many of the senators are male or female, how many of the senators are religious or atheist, how many of them are,
Yeah.
whatever different things, or
I think it would
ages.
be
Somebody
better
was
to
asking
ask.
what the
I think it'd be
ages
better to
were.
ask what political prescription they have for themselves, because if you say like what party do you align with, that really doesn't tell you much, because we
Yeah,
only have two options.
Extreme left.
yeah, extremely.
Yeah, that's where I am. I'm on the very far left. That's
too.
why I'm a socialist.
I don't put myself yeah, I guess we could definitely ask the question.
I'm a
I don't
leftist.
put myself anywhere. I've never understood the idea of being a leftist or a rightist, or any political party.
Well, you
Like,
might be the first true almost center person that I've ever actually met that might ascribe centrist. He's very close to it. There are some like righty beliefs that he has and some lefty ones. More that seem to lean to the right, but not like super crazy far right.
if they lean right
Like
at
you're
all, it's because they're really
anti-voting.
good ones.
But like, yeah, no, like Carson might be the first like true either barely off of center or dead center person I've ever met. I've met a lot of people who call themselves centrists, and they are not. But
Well, I just
Carson's
think that
close.
I just think that we should all have ideas of what we think are good things, what we think are right, what we think are how policies should work. And then if one political system feels that way at one point and then later they don't, we shouldn't go, "Oh, but I'm a leftist, so I'm staying on the left," or I'm
Exactly, I agree with you.
yeah, and so in my mind, so for example, and I'm sure Aric will disagree with this somewhat. I've always thought of myself as very left leaning, and my main reasons for that were freedom of speech, all these different ideas of freedom, which is why I kind of align with libertarianism now. But back in the 1990s, when I was a teenager, and in the early 2000s. The left was all about free speech and all the different freedoms. And then now it seems like the left is constantly anti-freedom, anti-free speech, and the right is for free speech. And
Well, I
I,
mean, it depends
I
on
disagree
who.
with you.
It depends on who you listen to, because like if you actually pay attention to who's passing what policy, the people on the right are the most anti-free speech. Like, to harp again, my fucking governor, DeSantis, he banned AP psychology because it might make white people feel bad. That was his stated reason, because it talks about some of the history behind like black oppression. He banned like a bunch of those kind of, yes, in colleges.
Okay,
At least either I will say either it was that he fully put through a ban, because I think that's what it said in the paper, but it might have said that he was trying to put one through. But if I remember right, he did indeed ban it. There are several courses. Yes, there are several courses in colleges that are like African American studies that you can't take in Florida anymore. There are sociology courses that you can't take anymore.
You should
stuff
send that
like
my
that.
way because I don't believe it.
It's something that has been very openly talked about for months.
You don't have to say another word.
Send it.
You can just send it, and then I'll read it. But there's no. I just don't buy it. I don't buy it at all.
Carson, I have to hold you for something you said.
Okay.
Okay, so I shared some ideas about gun control, and I said every gun should have a GPS on it, and you said so if in case that gun is going towards a school or in a area, will know automatically. You said that has been done. I tried for hours. I couldn't find anything related to that.
That guns have GPS on them? No, I didn't say that.
I think I have a screenshot. maybe you were mentioning about something else in that list, but specifically, do you agree with me that guns should have GPS, inbuilt GPSs, so we can actually track them? Put a fucking Apple
Um,
tag in it.
Marty.
I don't know. I could go either way on that. I'd have to think about it and hear the different arguments for it. But I don't know.
I don't even know how we would accomplish that, really, like
I
We
effectively.
think he's
have a
just saying
technology. We have already have a technology.
when you manufacture them, I think is what he's saying. But yeah, but I think you
No, no,
misunderstood.
no. Some sort of attachment which you have to have it no matter what. You can't remove it legally, and
Yeah,
so the thing is, no one can it can track you all the time. That's not the goal. But if it comes in a proximity of a school or a church or in a
yeah,
shopping mall where we don't want people with guns, it sends an alert.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we
No,
by a number we know that okay, this is the gun, this person owns it. Let's give him a call. Let's send some people, not police officers, something like that. What Eric suggested, some people like that, people, those people, so we can talk about it and fix it. We
yeah.
have a technology to do that already.
No, I think that's pretty interesting. I think you're more likely to get that to pass than the uniform thing if you want to have that be your fifth law. But you
Can
could
I get
you could
6 laws?
maybe. I can tell you right now the uniform's not passing, so you might as well just switch that one over. Um,
I'll make my case again.
okay,
But
okay.
still.
But yeah, if we can probably do six. Six is probably fine. Um, but yeah. Anyways, I just the idea that we pick parties or pick whatever, like obviously these names have to exist so we can like have things to talk about, so we can say, oh, this is why we're calling our group this is what we stand for. But the idea, I think so many people are just so tribalistic that they feel like this is my group and I stick with my group. And I don't know. I just feel like a crazy amount of the things that I think matter in the world that I used to view as left leaning things, and I might have just been ignorant, and I really just didn't understand the left at the time that I was more left leaning. But once those things alter, the idea of following a group if you don't agree with that stance any further, it just seems silly to me. So like, I don't think right and left. I don't think Democrat, Republican. I just look at what's going on. I look at the policies. If somebody's running for senator or president or whatever, like I honestly couldn't care less if they were Republican or Democrat or left leaning or right leaning. It would just be, what do they stand for? What are they making claims about? And then I'd vote in that way. And like it's insane the amount of things that I see that are very thought of as left leaning or progressive that I think are completely the opposite of what they were 15 years ago. So
Could you give
So
an example?
one of the idea is capitalism against capitalism, which comes from left. People think that oh, these people are for freedom, so they will be like okay, we should be okay with capitalism. But I'm not. I'm not okay in a world where someone has gold bars and other person don't have food. That just seems wrong. So that's a
Hmm.
left idea because the left idea was not about the freedom for the it was actually based on individual well-being. So when you include a lot of individuals, it's a group.
Well, it generally leftism is more collective. It's not. It doesn't have a hyper focus on individualism like a lot of the right leaning ideals do. So it's more like making sure that the community comes together to make sure that like everybody's taken care of, instead of like stepping on the skulls of the enemies that you had on the corporate ladder to get to the top and then telling everybody to go fuck themselves because you made it there. Like it's very like there's I can never remember the order you're supposed to say it in, but like it's the idea of like from each according to his ability to each according to his need. It's like everything should be shared in a sense. Like that's like I said, I'm not a communist, so like that's a communist idea, and the idea is like people who can't work or properly take care of themselves, people who are infirm or mentally unwell or too elderly would be taken care of by the community. That's like the idea of like medieval times when they had like a village idiot. That's kind of how that would go, is like that guy can't work in the fields or help take care of himself, so everybody comes together to make sure they're okay. And that's kind of the idea. It's very communal.
That's a perfect example of why I like both. I see both both sides of things. Yeah, and I think that's what's good. I think it makes sense to act as part of a group that you feel aligned with in that moment, and having kind of two groups appear no matter what. You have two kind of opposing groups that hopefully can work well together, and they can push each other in various different ways. I think there's nothing more horrible than not having a set of people telling everyone you can do it. You can do it yourself. You can be something. You can grow up and become something. Yeah, stand up straight, get it done, do a good job, make something of yourself. If you don't have that, then there's probably nothing. I mean, that's one of the simplest things I could probably say is without that, all you would have would be failure. Now, that being said, at the same time, you can have people wanting to help out when people need help and haven't figured out that kind of thing yet. Or in the cases of humans that can't figure out that kind of thing, I don't think they should just suffer and die or anything. And so having that kind of middle ground of doing a good bit of both is really important. And so that this, like, if anybody truly thinks if the right disappeared, we'd have a good world, or if the left disappeared, we'd have a good world, I just think they're not thinking it through.
I mean, I think if the far right disappeared, we'd have a better world, because that'd be a lot less of neo-Nazis and hateful people. But like, that's just me.
I am against
not
the
only is
idea
that
of anyone disappearing.
What's that?
I'm against the idea of anyone disappearing, because that's really bad. We need.
I don't mean like if those people like disappear. I mean like if those people like stopped being like terrible people.
We
like
need
if they
people
could
like
stop being
Jeffrey
prejudiced.
to understand how why democracy is important. I can't say anything more than that.
It's funny you said that right after what I said. Oh, dude.
Oh man. Yeah. Democracy is complicated. I'm not a fan of it, but
Me neither.
I don't.
That's the best option we have.
It's getting better.
yeah, I don't know. It's complicated. All of it's complicated. Yeah.
It is.
But yeah, Aric, tell me more about these neo-Nazis.
Well, the far right, the alt-right is what people usually associate it with. But like, if generally people who are on the far right that are aligned with like very undemocratic or hateful ideals, like a lot of the people who are on the far right or the alt-right that you could point to are people who like believe in a lot of conspiracism that generally falls back to anti-Semitic conspiracism. There are people who are more likely to commit domestic terroristic acts or be inspired to commit them. Like Nick Fuentes is one of these people online who like is very open about being like that. But
let me pause you real quick. What's the difference between alt-right and far right?
Far right generally can be just somebody who is like super Republican, to make it very simple. Alt-right is like hate groups, right? Like KKK, neo-Nazis, domestic terrorists that are aligned with like QAnon and all that kind of shit. The alt-right is like the people who spend all their time online trying to convince people that they need to shoot black people. Like, alt-right people are as far right as you can go. They're the type of people that would have like voted for Hitler.
Alt-right people exactly further right than the far right?
In a lot of circumstances. Like a lot of people who are on the far right are people who are like right on the cusp of being like that, but they're not quite there.
What about the far left?
The far left is mostly like anarchism or communism. There's not a lot of terrorism that comes from the far left, but there's also not a lot of people on the far left, at least not in
Okay.
America.
Interesting.
Like it's a smaller subsect, and there's no news outlet that specifically caters to them and tries to like convince them that they need to stand up and take the world into their own hands. Like it's a difference in approach. Most of what happens on the far left is infighting, like a lot of it. So there's not a lot of agreement on the far left because there's so many different esoteric, like hypothetical worlds that you could possibly fight for, and it makes it complicated to agree on things. That's one of the bigger issues with the left.
Is Jeffrey on the far right or the alt right?
I'd say Jeffrey is either right wing or on the far right. I don't know that he's on the alt right because he hasn't generally said much to me that would indicate that he's like part of a hate group.
Okay.
So I don't know.
But if the far left is communism, would that make the far right be no government?
Well, no, the far right is more like fascism. So the further right that you go, there is a point where like anarchism is no government. So there can be right-wing views that align with an anarchist worldview, like anarcho-capitalism, but or like some kind of like what's the word for it? It's like a neo-monarchism or something like that. But the further right you go, the more government control there really is, and the more there's like restrictions and fighting to restrict people's worldviews. So like that's why when you go all the way to the right, it's authoritarianism and fascism because it's perfect total control. Like you need to live your life the way I say you have to live it in my very specific worldview, or you don't deserve to be here, or you need to die. That's how a lot of people feel. Like that's where a lot of people who like go to abortion clinics and tell people to kill themselves because they've had abortions is on the alt-right. Like there's the alt-right is a somewhat like hazy thing. It's kind of like trying to describe fascism. Fascism in and of itself is a self-contradictory worldview. That's why fascist dictatorships don't last very long usually.
I wonder if it's less real than we think it is.
No, it's real. Like these people call themselves all right. This is real shit. It's just like there's not a lot of communists on the left. Like, or well, I mean, there's a lot of communists on the left, but there's not a lot of communists as a whole. There isn't a super high percentage of alt-right people. But the problem is that like the alt-right has been growing for the past. It's been what 2015, so the past like 8 years, it's been more and more popular. People who self-ascribe, people who align themselves
like on the internet, or like real humans.
Oh, I mean, like people. Well, I mean, most people who are like that don't have much of a life. So most of their life is spent in like 4chan.
Yeah, I just wonder how we. I wonder
but
how
like,
one tracks like the numbers, if it's like it's something that's real.
Most of those people who are there aren't people who like don't realize they're there. A lot of them are people who would self-ascribe that, like or they just like lie about it. Like in Charlottesville when they were marching, if you remember, they were like laughing as they said like, "We don't want to kill anybody. We don't want to kill Jews." Ah, ha, 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 ha. Like they were very openly like mocking that idea. We're just centrists. Like it's you have to look at the way people advocate. You have to look at the things that people say and then kind of extrapolate that. It's like it's a little harder to end up accidentally in like communism because that's such a specific thing. But it's not that.
I'm not
hard
wondering
to, like,
if somebody's accidentally somewhere.
over.
I'm just wondering if they exist. But anyways, I gotta hop off here. But yeah, I don't know the best way to figure out that kind of thing. I guess it's cool that I've never met any of these people in real life, so that's good.
Not that you know. I meet more of them than you think, and I only find out they're like that when they start to think I'm like that.
Yeah, I don't mind what somebody is that I don't know.
A lot of them have tattoos that tell you what they are.
Interesting. But yeah, I better hop off here. But it's good talking to you guys. And
yeah, it was nice talking to you.
Yeah.
Let's get some uniforms. We should make it where every time we have a talk like this, we have to wear uniforms.
I can't afford that shit. I wear my work uniform every time.
Vabehav has to supply it.
I wear my work uniform every time I come here.
Works for me. I'll order something. Yeah. Just get me the PO box.
Or at least no cleavage.
I'll get the
No,
worst
believe
TV
it.
forms possible.
I mean, I'm kind of chubby. That might be a real worry for me.
All right. You guys have a good one. I'll talk to you later.
I'll see you, y'all.
Bye.
Yeah, just too. Bye.